Hey folks, Jaime Oikle here from runningrestaurants.com. I'm going to talk about where we are right now, April 2nd, COVID crisis, restaurants, question marks like crazy. And so let me give a quick kind of story. And I got Roger, my buddy, that's going to join me in the conversation. But just like everyone else, I had questions. I don't know what's going on, answers. And I'm sitting up 12:30 one night recently, and I got the books behind me. And I'm like, let me just read for a little bit, try to get tired, try to get some sleep, because I couldn't sleep. And, so I turn around and there's a bunch of titles here. And needless to say, I ended up grabbing this book because I was like, when I read the title, Who Moved My Cheese? Yeah, I was like, oh man, I remember that book. And like the title, Who Moved My Cheese? I mean, that's like something big just happened, right? So Roger, you remember this book? Have you seen this book at all?
I read it many, many, many years ago, and I remember enjoying it very much and having a basic idea of the story, but you'd have to refresh our memory.
Yeah, I do. I want to refresh folks. So, good news for America is apparently 28 million copies have been sold. So a lot of people have seen this book. Unfortunately, when I read it, I pulled up the author Spencer Johnson has since died, unfortunately, in 2017. And this would have been a great dude for somebody to interview, saying, no one has ever moved a cheese like this on the world. What do you think, man? And he would have an opinion on that I think would be great insight. And the idea here is, the story is there's four beings in a little maze, right? The two of them are mice, and two of them are little tiny humans, or they act like humans. And what's fascinating is they're in a maze, and they go to a place where, oh my God, there's just tons of cheese. And they know that every day they can go back to that same spot, and they're going to be taken care of. They don't have to run through the maze anymore. They don't have to panic. They know their family's taken care of. Everyone's going to eat every day. Simple. They love it. Weeks and weeks and weeks, and goes on. And they just plan, hey, it's always going to be like this. Never going to change. And they make their plans. Boom. One day, no more cheese. Completely gone. And they start panicking. Meanwhile, the other two characters are mice. And what do mice do? They just react. So there's no cheese, and they go, no cheese, boom. They go back into the maze, and they go looking for the next opportunity. And some people do act like that, right? Oh, my situation changed? Boom, I go off to the next thing. But the human type characters in this little maze are like, whoa, I need my cheese. I planned on the cheese. I always had the cheese. It's always been here. It was always going to be here. I plan to retire with the cheese. And so it's going to come back. Listen, the two characters are Hem and Haw, right? So you can see where this is going, right? Hem and Haw, what to do about our life, right? And so they are like, don't worry. We'll go back home. We'll come back tomorrow. It's going to be here. Of course, it's not there the next day. We'll come back. It's going to be there. It's not there. And this goes on and on and on. And finally, of course, they're getting weak, and they haven't eaten in days now. So Haw eventually decides to go off in the maze. I got to take a chance. I remember what it's like to explore, to try new things. I'm going to do it. And the other guy says, no, everything's going to be fine. That dude stays put. Hems himself in, right? Never moves past what was happening in the past. Anyway, to make a long story short, Haw goes out in the maze, struggles, finds a little bit here, finds a little bit there, has a little bit of success. Eventually, after a lot of struggle, finds the new mega cheese load, which is bigger than the other one, better. And he's like, wow, this is great. But I'm not going to make the same mistake. I'm going to plan for things that could happen in the future. I'm not going to rely on this always being here. So really good story. Quick takeaways from that, Raj. What do you think?
Learned his lesson, right? It's like complacency in the restaurant business. Nobody can see around corners, but we think, oh, we've been in this business for a couple of years. Yeah, it might be seasonal here and there, but essentially I can count on it being this much business at this time of the year and that much business. And no one ever expected that business would come to a standstill. And we are like the humans in the maze, where suddenly a lot of us are dead in the water saying, what do I do next? I've been doing the same thing for 10 years, and all of a sudden I got a big brick wall in front of me. And some of us know how to pivot, or we got an idea on how to pivot. We might even pivot several times, but some of us can't pivot at all, or for a variety of reasons, there's nothing we can do. I fall into that camp. I mean, I have a restaurant now. My state governor shut us down as a sit-down restaurant. We attempted to do the takeout and delivery and curbside pickup mode, but my clientele, the majority of them, right now are seniors and the elderly. I'm in a small little town in Maine, and it's a breakfast and lunch place. And these people are not leaving their houses under any circumstances. And, we tried the grab and go thing and nothing happened. Meanwhile, my employees are standing around. I had to lay everybody off. So our pivot right now is obviously applying for government relief and all these programs out there and hoping for the best that we can reopen. We're also exploring doing the online merchandise sales that some restaurants are pivoting with. We may have an opportunity to do that because we do have a social media following. But yeah, wow. I mean, the mice are smart and the people are like, I've always done it this way. I'm always going to do it this way. What do I do now? And we need to shift that mindset.
Yeah. And so folks, to introduce Roger Beaudion here, he's currently the operator of restaurantrockstars.com, but also a longtime operator in the state of Maine in ski resort business. And like he said, just recently opened up a restaurant. So this dude has been in the business for years. And what's good is we can talk about his exact experience of operating a current joint and having to deal with the relief funds, having to lay people off, having to have government put things in place from day to day that change. So I thought the book was interesting. Listen, you can pick this up. I don't know, your library is unfortunately probably closed. Pick it up online. If you got to spend $12 on Kindle, do it. You can read it in an hour. It's going to make your brain go, oh shoot, which character am I? Because I guarantee you cannot be the Hem character who's going to stay and put, because things are not going to go back to the way they were no matter what at this point. So you have to, and everybody, there are people that are exactly doing that, waiting, assuming it's going to come back. It is not going to come back the way it was before, because it can't. We've seen that a shock to the system, like we just experienced, is put everybody out like a knockout from you pick your favorite fighter, Tyson in my day. This guy just knocked you out, and there's no answer for it. So when we come back, and we want to talk a little bit about that coming back part, you are going to have a different mindset, like completely different mindset. You can't go back to operating a restaurant that was struggling for 5% profit margin, because you can see that in 1 week hiccup, you are done. And so how do you operate to get past that? So we'll talk about that. And I thought this was a good metaphor, the cheese.
For sure.
And I like to talk about it like that, but so people are pivoting. Roger talked about his first pivot to takeout and delivery. I've been tracking on our website, restaurants doing the same thing in our city and elsewhere. It is a struggle they're fighting. They're not replicating the revenue. They still had to let people go, but they're fighting the good fight. And I hope they keep that on, because we do need those restaurants to do that. In my mind, Roger, let me ask you this question. I do not think, I'm going to pick a number out of thin air, but if there was 1,000 restaurants in my marketplace, March 1st, and let's say March 1st, a year from now, I don't think there's going to be 1,000 restaurants operating. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it goes back to that old adage, survival of the fittest. There's so many operators out there that are super strong. They've got their systems dialed. They follow the lead of the chains, and they realize that they've got to get bulletproof in their business, and they've got to be maximizing their profitability. They got to train their staff to sell. They've got to provide extraordinary experiences, really set themselves apart from the competition. And then there's those operators out there that have lost the passion, or they've been in the business for decades and they thought they were going to get out, and now suddenly they can't get out. Or, they just continue to work in their business instead of on it. And they really don't take inventory, and they don't know their costs and their financials. And they had a profitable business. Maybe it was marginally profitable, but it was adequate for their needs. And now they can't survive anymore. They didn't make enough money to be able to pay a manager or a management team. They were working themselves to death, 6-7 days a week. And now business is gone. And what happens when business comes back, and how do they get back in the game and expect to do what they did before, or even improve the business? These are all the catch-22 questions that you can answer, ask and answer all day.
This was the article that I guess it's not worth pulling up the share screen feature. I'll just read the title, and because when I read the title, it scared the crap out of me. Small businesses faced extinction level event. Congress ensures big corporations survive. So let me read that again. Small businesses, which let's think about independent restaurants, face extinction level event. Right. Meanwhile, big corporations, i.e. chains, will probably survive. It's probably pretty accurate. I think there is going to be an extinction level event where not extinction because people will survive, but like when I use that example of numbers, if it's 1,000 independent restaurants, a lot of them are not good. They are going to go the way of the dinosaurs and not be able to come back. The reason I say that is it's going to, well, listen, we don't know the level of the government relief. I'm hopeful that it
Yeah.
is substantial enough to cushion the fall. But still, it's not going to go back to 100% of people. Extinction level event. What do you think?
Well, you're touching on something that it hits me with another question. Yes, small businesses are more vulnerable than big business, but yet headlines recently announced that a major international chain that I would have thought was super, super successful. The restaurants are always packed across the country, and literally they are global in many countries. And now they're announcing that they can't pay the rent on their units. Granted, they're in high upscale shopping malls and all that kind of stuff. But you'd think a company like that would have a war chest to be able to sort of ride out the storm while they're waiting for these government programs. And what does that mean for a chain in addition to what does it mean to mom and pop on Main Street? Same thing. I mean, I think this has, broad scope, impact on this industry.
I don't
whatever
know.
level you're at.
I don't know if the chain you're referring to is Cheesecake Factory, but I did see a headline on them, and same story across the board where they had to furlough. I don't have the exact thing in front of me. I'm going to say 41,000 employees, huge number, right? And
Yes,
the same thing is
correct.
going to apply along the lines. And so, yeah, if like them, they can't cover rent and can't get accommodations, how is the little guy going to survive? So, if you follow good financial health for your own family, you're ideally going to have that 6 months of living expenses
Right.
whirled away, where if something happens, you can get by. And usually that's not so severe. But there's probably no restaurant on the planet that has 6 months war chest of expenses to get by because they are going week by week cash flow.
Right.
You've done this. Talk about your seasonal operation a little bit in the past because you've dealt with this mentally. You knew you had to jam it out because there was a period of time where you weren't going to make any money. So you knew you had to maximize the time that you were up and running. So kind of talk with that mindset and kind of spin it to where you are today and what you might learn from that moving forward. What do you think?
Well, you could go back 25 years in time when I started my first restaurant, and I didn't intend to be a seasonal restaurant. Granted, we were in a ski resort community, but it did have golf courses in the summer and that sort of thing. And I had to learn so much about this business when I first got into it, but we had a booming winter season when the skiers were there, and made money literally right out of the gate because we focused on differentiating what we offered, and we had a sophisticated offering, and we had amazing customer service, and we dialed in our profitability, and I put all these systems in place almost right off the bat. And then, you go into what is called mud season where, okay, the snow is melting and the sidewalks kind of roll up for a couple of weeks until spring kind of kicks in, and now the traffic comes back and people are thinking about playing golf. So we reopened the restaurant, and literally nothing happened, crickets, and we probably opened for 6 or 7 weeks, and we lost the entire money or profit that we made all winter. And we had to go back to the bank and get a loan to reopen for the next winter season. Thankfully, they believed in us enough, and it was easier to get money from a bank and a restaurant back then. And then we decided never again will we open for the summer. We're going to make the seasonal model work. So that's when I went into super budget mode and super, let's squeeze every nickel of profit out of this place, and let's figure out how much cash we're going to end the season with and what our fixed expenses are going to be for the next 6 to 8 months while we're closed. Put aside enough money for payroll and cost of goods to reopen until the season kicks in again. And then I had that system so dialed, it's like I would be sitting on a good chunk of change at the end of, say April, and I would have plenty to last me all summer and have plenty to open up with again. And literally we built our cash reserves year after year after year. And I anticipated bad seasons where it didn't snow very much or it rained a lot. And some seasons were better than others, but we improved the business every single year. We grew the business. We created affinity with our customers so that the customer base was expanding. And we literally built an iconic restaurant that grew to $1.3 million in sales in just a 4-month period. And then we'd shut it down. And I sold that business 5 years ago, but that was my mindset in opening this new place. The only track record or history I had was the prior owner's financials and tax returns that showed, okay, in this month I did this much revenue and this much revenue. Our costs were going to be different than their costs, of course. And I had to figure all that in. And then we spent a ton of money on improvements because this place needed a lot of fix up. There was a lot of deferred maintenance. And then our eye opener was, wow, we just closed the kitchen about 5 weeks ago to do a major kitchen renovation because Maine was isolated from COVID-19. No cases were in Maine yet. And I thought, oh, business as usual. We'll open up for the weekend. I was expecting to do what our typical Saturday and Sunday business was, which was a nice amount of business. And all of a sudden we reopened from this kitchen renovation and it's 70% down both days. And it's like, wow, that's a slap in the face. We attempted to pivot and do that grab and go and curbside pickup model. And like I said earlier in this recording, the customer didn't want to go out. They didn't want to come into contact with people. It's still like this today. And restaurants are struggling with that model. And a lot of them don't know what their daily break even is or what it even costs them to try to serve the customer today. And they're losing even more money doing the grab and go than they would if they just shut the place down. So these are all critical decisions to make. One of the things that,
I want to come back to a few things you said there, man. But one of the key words I wrote down a minute ago was anticipate, anticipating back to the cheese stuff, right? No one anticipated any change because where we were right now, man, system was flush with cash, bull market, the stock market was at the high. Everybody felt great.
Yes.
Spending money. It was easy, right? It's one of those called easy money phase, right? It was just very easy to operate. People are making money hand over fist in a lot of situations. So you're not anticipating change. Boom, change comes. I would argue it's not going to come back the way it was, never be the same. But what that means, to your point, is you need to know those numbers better than ever before. And so right now is a chance to go back into those spreadsheets, back into those reports, and find out what was going on. You recently put out an article that talked about getting your house in order, and that gently touches on this stuff. And I think we'll probably look to deliver a full-blown resource on that for operators, how to do that. But if you were to give a quick 60-second, 2-minute overview on how to think about getting your house in order in the short term, even though we have no idea what that date to reopen is, what would you say folks need to look at right now, assuming they can just kind of get some quiet time and dig into their stuff?
Well, there's 3 things that I think will have the greatest impact on their future success or their survivability in the short term. And that's knowing your prime costs. And there are so many restaurants out there that either are intimidated by the process, they don't know where to begin, or it's such an onerous, or they think it's such an onerous process that they don't even go there. And as long as they see their bank account growing a little bit, they think they're doing okay, but they have absolutely no idea what their food cost is, their labor cost is. And combined food, beverage, and labor costs are your prime costs. And if they take inventory at all, it's simply just to take a look on the shelves to see what I need to order this week, not what's the value of my goods on hand, what was my cost of goods last week and the week before that, and is there consistency there? Are my costs high? Are my costs in range? Am I happy with it? Am I making as much money as I could be making? And you wouldn't know that unless you calculated those numbers. The daily break even would be number 2. And again, I touched on that a little bit earlier, but you've got a combination of fixed and variable costs that you must pay whether you're open or closed. The fixed costs you pay regardless, things like the mortgage or the rent kind of thing and the insurance. I mean, you pay that whether your business is shut down tight or you're operating. And then the variable costs are the things that you can control that, you furlough your staff, suddenly you got no payroll costs anymore, or your cost of goods goes down if you're just doing the grab and go model. But you need to add up all these things every single month, know what they are on a monthly basis, divide by 30, and that's your magic number. And if you don't at least bring that in every single day you're open, then you're losing more money by opening than being shut down. So some restaurants will be able to make a go of it with a pivoted model, but probably not 7 days a week like before. Maybe they can only make money 5 days a week, but they got to figure that out,
Listen, here's a question that relates to what you just talked about. When you talk about the pivot, right now, people have made a pivot to takeout and delivery. And in doing so, I hope they've done this. They've made their menu simpler. They focus on stuff that hopefully is very profitable. They have limited their menu substantially. They've gone to family meals, delivering value. And 2 things that is showing, and I want to kind of ask your advice, last question on, is one, how dramatic should restaurants relook at their menu when they open? Like, maybe is it necessary to have 45 dishes? And two, obviously fine dining has, like, where is fine dining today? It's tricky. I've seen a lot of people promoting, pick up your steak. And I highlighted a couple of those in the newsletter we put out today, because people do still want to have a nice meal. And so it is good to get a nice piece of steak. But probably the more successful ones that were ready for the pivot was QSR and fast service and so forth.
For
And,
sure.
and you know this. So two things there. With the pivot, menu management, and then, fine dining, casual, QSR, where are we going to land? What do you think the consumer's going to think? What do you got?
I'm really glad you brought that up. It's really, the term I use is menu engineering, and you need to do this twice. If we didn't have this crisis right now, let's start there. There are so many restaurants out there that have never costed out their menus and have absolutely no idea what the profit is that each plate contributes, or what it costs to serve that plate to the customer, whether it's an appetizer, an entree, a burger, a sandwich, a salad, a dessert. So many restaurants have never gone through that process, and they are willy-nilly on assigning a price to it. And what I find out is their profits are all over the map. Every time they sell a lower profit appetizer, the spread or the profit difference between the lowest profit item on the menu and the highest appetizer on the menu might be $5, $6, $7. And when you do the math and you figure out the calculations, for whatever reason, with consistency, and I've done this with like 5 different clients now, lower profit items are bigger sellers than higher profit. The volume of sales is that much greater. And every time they sell that, they're losing $5 that they could be making if they sold the other higher. So that's where the engineering thing comes in. So if we didn't have a crisis right now, I'd say, okay, everybody go back to the drawing board. The very first thing you should do is cost out your menu, figure out what your most profitable items are. And in the short term, train your staff to recommend those every table, every time. Highlight them on the menu, box them in, call them customer favorites or most popular, whatever. That's the quick solution. The harder solution is going back to the drawing board and figuring out, okay, should I drop these lower profit items from the menu? But then the customer might complain because they're popular. People like them. So what's the solution to that? You raise the prices to be more in line with the higher profit items, or you change ingredients, or you adjust portion sizes, or a combination of all of those things, And then you bring in cash cows. We've talked about that a lot, in different conversations we've had, but that's the way to make money in the restaurant business. So that's the first side of the equation if there was no crisis. During the crisis, you really want to pare down your menu for 2 reasons. One, you got to figure out what are the most profitable things I can sell right now, because I don't want to spin wheels selling stuff that's not profitable, because I'm not going to make any money doing this with a lower price point. So you got to figure out, okay, what's the most profitable thing I can sell, A, and then B, what are the simplest things that I can make with a skeleton crew? Because I can't afford to keep 5 line cooks on doing all this stuff. My business might come to a dramatic slowdown. I might be doing 60% of what I was doing before. Who knows? So now you got to be you in the kitchen and maybe your lead line cook. And what can we do to satisfy the public with a limited menu, but also make sure that everything we sell is as profitable as we can sell it? So those 2 things have to happen. But now's the time to do it, right? Because a lot of restaurants are idle or they're slower than before. When it's business as usual and it's full tilt boogie, nobody's got really the time to dig deep and do this stuff. So that's why putting your house in order now is essential for your future survival and potential success.
Yes. Thank you for that. And I got a couple of follow-up questions there that I want to point out. Let just to reiterate what Roger said for a second. Let's pretend you had a menu and you had 5 appetizers. Whichever one you sold, it would be great if they were all delivering $5 to your bottom line. 10 entrees, every entree delivering $12 of profit to your bottom line. And these are just numbers to grab onto. Mm-hmm. But you shouldn't have one entree that's delivering 12 and one that's delivering 2, because you really don't even want to bother selling the entree that's delivering you $2 of value. It's not worth it. So don't have a menu that does that. And you are going to fall into that trap if you don't do what Roger just talked about of costing everything out. And yes, you may have to drop the one that's making you $2, even if everybody loves it, because it's not profitable. So I have this is not a theory, I guess, for prognostication about the future. I think restaurants are going to run a lot leaner in terms of the number of people that they have, because they're nervous about spending money. So there might be less doing more, right? Less servers on the floor, or less people in the kitchen. So they might need to raise their prices more.
Yes.
Because to build profit into a model that makes sense. And we as consumers may have to figure out that it should cost more to go out to dinner and accept that or not. But restaurants maybe shouldn't exist if they can't be profitable. I think that's a fair statement. And I really see technology in different ways coming in to help with some of these solutions to make the operations more profitable. And I'm not saying there's going to be robots taking your orders anytime soon, but, and I don't want to displace any staff, but at the end of the day, you're going to see whether it's technology helping with your accounting and maybe that saves you some money, or it's a kiosk that's taking your order that is faster and efficient and not creating a payroll. And maybe from the customer standpoint, me as a customer, I can go in, use the little kiosk thing, and now maybe I don't have to tip. And if I don't have to tip 20%, I could pay the restaurant 15% more. And maybe that's how they make money. So these are just systematic things that may change. Any guesses on what things may change, Raj?
Well, we've already seen those kiosks in airports, the self-serve kiosks that virtually eliminates the server taking your order and limiting labor. And now you just got a food runner on the floor. I've been to several airports that have done this, and it kind of takes the human personal touch out of it. But the flip side is it works in an airport because everyone's in a hurry and they're really just trying to get in and get out as fast as they can and get a quality meal and a quality drink. It's not so much about sitting there for an hour and having the server take you through the menu and like have an experience, right? It's efficient. I definitely see that coming. But let me spin it back to what we were just talking about. I'd like to really hammer that home because we're talking about the limited profit that restaurants have. The majority of restaurants, they say you're doing well in this business if you can bring a 10 to 12% net profit. We know there's lots of restaurants in the 8% range. We talked about there being lots of restaurants in the 5% range that just aren't going to survive this thing and come out the other side. And what we were talking about, this menu engineering, I've seen have such a huge impact on that profit number. One of my recent clients, this puts this into perspective because it kind of blows me away. This is the biggest thing that I've done recently, but this client has a busy lunch and dinner place, and there's 81 different menu items across both menus. And I'm talking everything from soups and salads and sandwiches and burgers and entrees and desserts on both of those menus, 81 different items. And yes, they had all that stuff costed out. They just hadn't looked at the data. Their chef costed it out and said, here you go, owner, here's the data and all that kind of stuff, but they weren't using it. I did this complete analysis. And I've got this whole system worked out where I can figure out volume of sales on each individual item, what the spread difference is in each category, and I rank stuff in terms of volume of sales and what profit, the highest profit item in each category contributes X. And then everything in descending order is losing you $2 on this, $4 on that, $6 on that, and then each column is totaled. And here's the kicker. This restaurant over the past 6 months has lost a potential profit of $183,000 on that menu in 6 months alone, $300,000 plus a year, because the lower profit items in every single category are the bigger sellers and are the most popular sellers. And that knocked their socks off. It knocked my socks off. And I'm thinking, okay, this is a busy lunch and dinner place, and not every restaurant, has 150 or 200 seats at that level. But even if you figured out that you just, you could be making an extra 30 or 40 or 50,000 bucks in 6 months, wouldn't that make a huge difference in that profit number for you? If only you did this menu engineering thing. It is so critically important. This is the difference between success or just survival, or, even lasting in this business beyond this crisis. I mean, that just hits me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, dramatic difference. Let's go back to where we are today to reel it back in, and we'll start to close up for people. Unprecedented times, as we know. So a lot of folks are looking at the relief programs that are out there.
Right.
Again, on our site, runningrestaurants.com. Just yesterday, I updated our relief program page. Man, I wish I had it up right in front of me. But what you'll see there, I'm going to get there in a second. What you'll see there is information about the CARES program, a link to the NRA's description of that. What you'll see there is the rest NRA themselves running a program that is just straight up donations, and that they wish to give people can apply for that to help them with their costs. And that sounds like it's off to a great start in terms of money. There's another initiative looking, Restaurant Workers Relief Program, looking to provide workers with supplies and food and meals and things like that. Very, very admirable. That looks awesome. A bartender emergency assistance program where I saw Miller Lite themselves donated $1 million into that fund, where people can ask for. And then the North Carolina people reached out to me. They had a resource for folks, and probably every state is doing the same. And Roger can speak to Maine because he's involved with the Maine board there. So there are relief programs out there. And specifically, I know folks are looking at the payroll one and the CARES one. Roger, you filled out more forms than you care to probably mention in the last week or so. Talk about your experience with relief. What do you think is going to come from it?
I've always been of the mindset of get in line early or first, and don't delay or procrastinate this process. In my own experience, yes, the SBA is offering some pretty amazing programs that you have to try to take advantage of. So my first advice would be obviously talk to your lending institution, whether that's a bank, a credit union, or whatnot, because these are the ones that you'll have to work with to qualify for these SBA programs. But again, the SBA announced this relief, the disaster economic injury disaster program, and the bandwidth just immediately evaporated because hundreds of thousands of people were applying for it immediately. They didn't procrastinate. And I myself was on this website for hours and hours, several days in a row. And there was a little sort of meter telling you what your progress was and how much you accomplished versus when you're going to be done. And I only got to like 25% after 6 or 7 hours on this thing. And it literally would slow down to the point where I would answer a question and then the little thing would spin for like 5 minutes before you'd go on to the next question. You can answer another one. And then you'd wait and wait. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then the thing went down for maintenance for 2 days because it crashed. And now it's beautiful. They have a new link with a complete streamlined site that literally takes you 15 to 20 minutes max to fill out this if you apply for the disaster relief loan. And then there's a box you can check that immediately within 3 days will give you a $10,000 grant if you qualify with your small business. And the parameters are not very stringent. I mean, most of our small businesses will fall into this category, and you can get an immediate $10,000 grant that you will not have to pay back if you fit the mold there. So I'm taking advantage of that one. The CARES Act is beautiful because our biggest fear, of course, in my business and most businesses is, okay, I've lost my staff. Are they going to ever come back to me, or are they going to somehow find something else? Will I have to rebuild my team on top of trying to rebuild my business? So this is the most beautiful of all, so that you can pay your people whether your restaurant is closed or not, and you don't have to pay those loans back provided you use the funds to pay your staff as you did before. And then there's a little bit left over. You can pay, mortgage or interest payments and utilities and other fixed costs. That's a great one. I'm applying for that one. I also went to my lender, immediately negotiated a line of credit that's literally going to cover my fixed costs for the next 10 months if I can't reopen. So all these things in combination are part of my survival strategy. And then let's not forget, there's an unemployment program now that'll allow you to apply if you're a self-employed person, even if you haven't paid into the system yourself. So you have to look into all these programs, stay on top of them, and take advantage of whatever you can, and try to be really at the head of the line and not get bogged down and lost in the system. But there's help out there. You just got to go look for it and find it and get it.
Yeah, good, Raj. Thanks for that update from your side. And I think what happened, I'm going to say right around St. Patrick's Day when the panic button was officially hit, and restaurants, a lot of them reacted that day, next day, boom, you're all fired because we don't have any money, which I get, which was the gut reaction. I don't understand all the details of it, but the government program apparently lets you rehire those people to put them into these programs if necessary. So do dig into that. It could potentially be the savior for a lot of folks. There's a lot of loan forgiveness aspects if you hit the dotted lines that is never before it. And I'm not going to use the word free money, but loan forgiveness kind of means free money. So if you hit all the dots, it could be very beneficial to get you through this. So do that. Use our site as a starting point, and then jump off into these resources to do that. The unemployment benefits have never been better if they follow through with that plan. So that's an option for your staff. And then the last 2 days, I covered this early on, and the answer was seemingly going to be no. We talked about insurance very early on in Roger's call, and the next day with David from Bar and Restaurant Insurance, and then another time with maybe even Dale. The big restaurant groups are suing the big insurance companies who are trying to deny the claims for loss of business revenue. I'm blanking on the phrase, but unintended closing, right? What's the phrase I'm looking for? Business interruption. Business interruption. A lot of times it's excluded. Some policies it was not explicitly excluded. Nevertheless, those guys are getting sued, and I've seen pieces where the government is putting pressure on those insurance people to make payments. So follow up on the insurance route as
Absolutely
well.
True.
Would be my thought there. So we covered a lot here today, Raj. We started with the good old Who Moved My Cheese book. If you haven't read this, it'll take you less than an hour to read it. I would read it as a mindset change of how you react when big things change. What do you do? You're going to have to change. So you're going to have to get into a mindset change. It is going to have to be a dramatic amount of change to do that. We're not going to go back to business as usual. So we're going to be helping you talk about how to get your house back in order when you're ready. We don't know when that's going to be. We're sitting here April 2nd. It's definitely not going to be in April. Is it going to be in May? I don't know that yet. I'm not all that hopeful for May. So, but what can we do in the meantime to get our house in order? We're going to start delivering you some resources for that. The relief options are your best things to be looking at right now. And then, just if you pick up some nuggets from Roger's background, his experience, I think the seasonality that he's gone through in the past is going to give him a good mindset to succeed. So, closing parting thoughts, Raj, what do you got?
Yeah, let's talk about that insurance real quick and other obligations. So I reached out to my insurance company, and I've got workers' comp insurance, I've got general liability policies, and all those companies are forgiving late payments, and they're extending terms to make payments. A lot of my creditors are giving me, interim payments and terms and all those things. So you can't ignore the stuff. You should literally contact all your creditors, explain the situation, and say, I do intend to pay my bills, but what can you do for me, and what can we work out here to make it amenable to both of us? That's the first thing. And then let's close with you got to stay relevant with your customer. You got to stay in touch and communicate with your customer, whether that be social media or putting a banner on your building or a giant sandwich board out front, with an inspirational message. We miss you. We'll be back soon. Thank you so much. Whatever it is, it's like you just got to stay relevant. I mean, we're doing continual social media posts just inside our restaurant, showing an empty place, saying we miss you. And, we just renovated our kitchen. Look how beautiful it is. And we can't wait to get back. And it's like, we just, you got to do these posts that just remind people of what you do and how you do it and what you do well. Photographs of the food that you were serving, look forward to this Eggs Benedict. It's coming back. We just got to stay relevant. And we're doing a lot of that. Yeah.
Good, Raj. Two things for folks. One is Roger is also, in addition to everything he does, I don't know how he does it all, he's also a podcaster and writer. And if you go to his site, restaurantrockstars.com, he's got an archive of maybe almost 200 episodes now at this point, with lots of interviews. So if you have time to dig into resources, he's got great resources. He's got courses and programs that will help guide you on the way back already created. I think we're going to look to create some more stuff specific for this, but he's got great programs. On our site, runningrestaurants.com, over 2,000 articles for you to dig into. Now, if you are in the state of shutdown and you're looking for resources to build on, I've opened up if you go to the membership page, you'll see an option for 3 months where you can subscribe for free to get into those resources. And that is worth $150 straight out. But inside there, there's thousands of dollars worth of valuable content that are going to get you ready. So definitely visit the website for that. And stay tuned to our site. Roger, I, and some other contributors are going to be looking to deliver you guys the tools you need to be ready when it comes back. You don't want to be the ones that miss out on it. It's going to be like, at the end of the day, it's going to be like a grand reopening when we do open, and we need to take advantage of that, be operating at full tilt, be profitable from day one, again, when that is there. So we're going to be there for you to do that. Sorry there, Roger. I'll give you another chance for a last second thoughts. What your website addresses, social addresses? What do you got?
Yeah, restaurantrockstars.com is very simple. I'm on Twitter at RestRock1. We're on Facebook, just Restaurant Rockstars. And I'm glad you're offering what you're offering. Everyone's trying to do what they can for the industry, and, giving people deals and helping them through this time is why we're all here.
Yeah. Awesome. So check Roger out at his website, restaurantrockstars.com. Stay tuned to us here, runningrestaurants.com. You're going to get lots of resources to get you through. We'll be in touch. We'll be there soon. Thank you, Roger, for being with me. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, James. Always fun. Wish the best to everyone out there.
Yep. We'll see you guys soon. Stay safe. Bye-bye.